Welcome back to StoryTube, everybody. Seasons, tweetings. What's the story? It's November, it's the end of November, and it's time to wrap up the month, and it's the best month of the year because it's my birthday.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Obviously, we're coming towards the end of the year, which is where all of the Booktube end of year videos start, naturally, given that it's the end of the year. And that's something that we actually really look forward to.
I am so excited.
Because before joining Booktube, we did all of the end of year stuff like a couple of nerds together on our own with nobody listening. So we're pretty excited for the end of year stuff. So we'll do some housekeeping until then and just do another wrap up now. We'll wrap up November and we'll go into December with a clean slate. And we'll make some other videos for you guys. And then we'll start thinking about the end of year stuff, which is fun. We're going to talk about what we read, and I'll talk about what I'm currently in the middle of, because my reading has kind of skyrocketed in the last few weeks. Things have been pretty chill in work, so I've read a good bit, and I've ticked off a couple of big things from my TBR, from my list of things I've wanted to get to for a while. And I think your reading has improved significantly as well, because you were in a bit of a slump.
Well, the bar was very low for improvement, but I'm happy to report that there was improvement.
We are most pleased to report on the improvements that have been made in the reading quality and variety in November.
I am most pleased, yes.
I'll get the comics out of the way. You may have seen our Spider-Man video that we made earlier on in the month, and I started off the month reading the brand new Ultimate Spider-Man run. Just almost fell off my knee. That is Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1, Married with Children. It's by Jonathan Hickman, and the art is by Marco Checchetto, who is one of my favourite modern Marvel artists, I think. One of the current ones that I think is doing the best work. He is the artist on the Daredevil run, or was the artist on the Daredevil run that Chip Zdarsky was writing, which is probably the best modern current Marvel run. So I was very excited because Jonathan Hickman is also one of my favourite writers. He wrote the best run ever, in my opinion, on the Avengers, on Fantastic Four. And he wrote Secret Wars, which they're making into a movie in a few years, and Doomsday and all that stuff is straight from Hickman's run. But this is the first time he's ever written Spider-Man. And this was really good. This is a story that Bilbo is stuck.
I was trying so hard not to laugh. He could have just sat down, and I don't know how he made it so messy. Anyway,
Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't want to go on too much about it. You can watch the Spider-Man video that we made. I go over like sort of the entry points and places to start if you want to ever read Spider-Man comics. But this is a story that a lot of Spider-Man readers have been wanting for a very long time, and it's Peter Parker married with kids, married to Mary Jane. And it's a sort of an alternate take on the current universe. It's an alternate universe within Marvel, so it's not beholden to continuity. Jonathan Hickman's going to do his own thing, and he's going to be allowed to do his own thing, I hope. But he should, because it's the Ultimate Universe. Anyway, if you don't know what the Ultimate Universe is, go watch our Spider-Man video. Then I also read a new comic, or newish comic, new to me, that I've been wanting to read for a while, because the artist is the son of one of my other favourite comics artists, and that is That Texas Blood by Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips. Jacob Phillips is the son of Sean Phillips, who does the art for Criminal by Ed Brubaker, which is arguably one of the greatest comic series ever written. And it's sort of like an anthology comic series. I'm talking about Criminal now, not That Texas Blood. But it will make sense in a moment, trust me. And it's all about how crime affects towns, cities, how it sort of seeds itself into generations, and kind of it's almost like a sickness that's passed down through generations. And Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips in That Texas Blood are kind of doing that, not quite as well as Ed Brubaker and Jacob's daddy. But it's set in the Deep South. It's set in Texas. It's good, but I felt I would rather be reading Criminal. I'll probably continue this. They actually have a sort of a prequel, a kind of a historical western that is set in the same town that they wrote, that's unrelated, but kind of, yeah, about that generational thing of the town living through this kind of life. I'll probably read that, but it just made me want to go back to Criminal, which is exactly what I did. I'm continuing my reread and new read because there's some stories within Criminal that I've not read and I don't even know which ones they are. But now that I have these beautiful collected editions with the entire series in 4 books, 3 main title, and then there's a Cruel Summer book because that's the longest arc that they wrote. Criminals, yeah, it's one of the best comics ever written. Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips. It's very noir, it's very pulpy, but it's very psychological, it's very character focused, and it is about why these people are the way they are. There's a lot of interconnected stories and ripple effect and causality and decisions leading to repercussions that echo through decades, and you know, one tiny little moment in one story will have a ripple effect for a totally different set of characters in another story, but there's always some overlap. There are recurring characters. It's just a very, very good series. And I kind of felt that That Texas Blood was sort of mimicking Criminal. And the style and the structure and the themes. But it didn't do it quite as well. But it has potential. But Criminal is great.
Well, I also read some comics because, as you might know, if you've been watching the channel and watched my most recent solo video, I've been struggling to finish things. I've been struggling to enjoy things, to really get into things. So I figured it might be a good time to get back into reading a couple of comics that are short and just into that instant gratification of reading something in an hour and completing it. So the first thing I picked up was Once and Future by Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora, which is an Boom Comics, which is one of the independent publishers. And I read the first 18 issues, first 3 volumes, a couple of years ago, and I was waiting for the rest of them to build up. So I read volumes 4 and 5, which are the last ones, so I finished the story. Before I get into it, I just had a page open because I wanted to show you the artwork, because it's quite metal and very, very fantasy. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a flavour. I hope you can see that. Of what the art looks like. And the concept of this story of this comic is essentially Arthur being the once and future king who, according to myth, is going to come back in the hour of Britain's greatest need. And there are some people that mistake the current political climate, or of a couple of years ago anyway, as Britain's greatest need. And you basically have a bunch of people that would have voted for Brexit trying to bring Arthur back to life. But Arthur is not the only mythological figure that creeps in here. Essentially, this operates on a concept that all stories are true. If you're told about this, you start seeing all the magic things and you can never go back to the way things were, and you basically get sucked into that story. So it's a really fun concept, and I didn't remember exactly where we were with the story, but I got back into it really quickly. And it was just a fun read. So I'm glad I finally finished the series. I really, really liked it. It's one of my favourite ones that I've read, I think, from Image, or not Image, Boom. And I read the 2 in like a day or 2, so that felt good. So I figured, let's keep going and do more of that.
Nice.
So another series that I have ongoing that I had paused for a few months, I think, or since like the end of last year, because I was waiting for more issues to build up, was Darth Vader by Greg Pak. So I had, again, 2 more volumes, in this case, volume 8 and 9. Yeah, 8 and 9 to catch up on. So I read those in an afternoon as well. If you've watched the channel for a while, you know that I love Darth Vader comics. I am now completely caught up. I have read every single Darth Vader main title comic issue that has been published in trades. I believe there's a couple of issues out that I haven't read yet, because the last trade in Greg Pak's run is coming out in December or January, relatively soon. So that run is almost over. So I'm glad I'm caught up. And I mean, I don't think he's treading any new ground at this point in terms of the character. I think the beginning of the run is the strongest, and I really, really loved that. But I'm still having a great time. I just enjoy the aesthetic of Vader and the stories that you can come up with, and the constant push and pull between like the dark side of the Force and the Jedi. Like, it's just fun. I just enjoy it. So I had a good time, and that kind of helped me. Okay, I'm starting the month and I've finished 4 books, even though they each took me like 45 minutes to read. But I think it helped me kickstart things a little bit and just enjoy myself.
Next thing I'm going to talk about is also a video that I made in November. You could go watch it. I read The Black Loch by Peter May, which is the 4th book in his Lewis trilogy, which is no longer a trilogy. He wrote that trilogy about 10-15 years ago. It was finished for a very long time. And just this year, he decided to come back to this series because he's been doing a lot of research about industrial salmon farming that's taken place on the Isle of Lewis,
naturally,
in the Hebrides. Peter May has become quite a climate activist in his later years. He's actually gonna retire from writing soon, I believe, or at least he's certainly winding down.
Bit of a Don Winslow.
Yeah, he just decided to come back because he was going to write about the same situation, but a book set in Scandinavia, I believe in Norway. And he was going to travel there for research, but that was during the pandemic. So that got shut down and he shelved it. And then he discovered that the same thing, or he learned more about the same thing going on in the Outer Hebrides. So he said, well, why don't I just go back and revisit these characters 15 years later? And then that sort of sparked him thinking about where those characters might be 15 years later. And that's kind of the heart of the book, really. All other stuff is props and foundations for his character stories. Stories just about people in small towns and all of their messy interpersonal relationships and decisions made, echoing through time, kind of similar to Brubaker and Criminal. And it's brilliant, it's great. It's still as atmospheric as it always was. He picked a great setting for some crime books, so he's kind of blessed with that anyway. But he does use that setting to great effect. And the island is as much a character as all of the great characters in these books. So that was a really fun one. If you want more of this, if you want to know more about the trilogy, go watch the video. I promise you, fantasy fans, you might like these books. Character-driven vibes in a remote, rugged location might be your thing.
The first novel I read in November was for the Crime Book Club, which I'm no longer leading because I no longer work there, but our friend Rachel took it over. So we read the book. Well, I read the book. You kind of did.
I listened to 75% of the audiobook,
Yeah.
but wasn't for me.
So that was My Sister the Serial Killer by, I don't know how to pronounce it, Oyinkan Braithwaite. So this is, it's kind of advertised as a comedic crime book, and that is what I was expecting, like a bit satirical perhaps, or tongue-in-cheek, and I'm not sure that's exactly what it was. I'm a little bit confused as to what it really wanted to be, and I think that was to the book's detriment, because it didn't fully commit one way or the other. It tried to tackle too many things in a very, very short page count. It's a short book. I think the audiobook is like 4 hours. And it's basically about the main character's sister calls her desperate because she has accidentally killed the man that she was dating. And our main character then goes to help her basically get rid of the body, because you would do that for your family. This happens, it's an accident, whatever. This happens 3 times. And this is where this book picks up, where our main character is basically coming to the realization of, oh, well, my sister is actually a serial killer. This is a problem. And then the sister gets involved with the man that she has a crush on, so she doesn't want her to kill him. Anyway, so that's kind of the concept. It is more serious than it sounds. Like, it sounds a bit silly, but it is trying to comment on like morality and family and how far would you go. At what point do you become an accomplice? At what point is silence enough to make you guilty? Like, all those kinds of questions. But then it doesn't go super deep into exploring those questions. And it goes into a bunch of other things as well, of like the relationship between the sisters that I thought could have been interesting, but I thought the sister is probably the most annoying character I've read all year. I could not stand her at all. And honestly, she should have just gone to jail. Like, most of these people should have just gone to prison, and like, that's it. So like, I think she went a little bit, it wasn't nuanced enough. So the questions that the book was trying to ask were interesting, but the way it was executed was not necessarily interesting enough, because I thought the answer was pretty clear cut with these characters and in this book specifically, if that makes sense. I did kind of enjoy myself reading it. It was very quick and just, there was nothing wrong with it. It's a little bit different from anything else that I've read, really. And so it's set in Nigeria, I should have mentioned. And I half read it and half listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook kind of gave it a more local sense of place, I think, that isn't necessarily there in the writing, but just with the narrator, it was a little bit more immersive, and I guess that gave it an element of being more interesting to me, because it's not a perspective that I've read a lot of, especially not in like crime fiction. But again, it remained fairly surface level, didn't go very deep with it. So I thought the book should have either picked a lane and picked a theme and committed to that, or just been longer, and if it wanted to explore all of these things. So it left me kind of confused as to how to even rate it, because I enjoyed myself. I just didn't know what framework to judge it with, because I'm not sure if it wants to be serious or not. I'm not sure if it wants to be crime or literary fiction. It was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, by the way, in like 2019, I think, or something like that. I can't remember when, a couple of years ago. I wouldn't say that it was a miss or that I disliked it. And I certainly seem to have a lot to say about it. So that's a positive, I think. But yeah, it fell short, I believe, of what it wanted to do. Mostly because I'm not sure what that was exactly. But hey, I finished it. And at this point in the year, we're taking the wins that we can get. But unfortunately, still no banger.
Next, I took the opportunity to, I guess, cross some books, or, well, a particular author off the list that I've had on that list for quite some time. And I finally read some Claire Keegan. I read Small Things Like These, which we'll put there. And I read Foster. Small Things Like These is just fine. As we would say in Ireland, it's grand. But I really liked Foster. I think what Claire Keegan's style and her approach, it's very minimalist, and there is a lot left unsaid, and that's where the beauty is, where the kindness lies. And for me, in Small Things Like These, there were a few moments of, and this is because I'm Irish, a few moments of like gimmicky, Irish paddiness. And it didn't rub me up the wrong way. It just got annoying after a while. There's a lot of that prevalent in Irish fiction, with the small town kind of way of speaking, which is just all, it's sure isn't it a rhetorical question all the time? Sure, isn't that the way we talk all the time now, isn't it? Oh, sure, your man down the road there, or isn't he doing a lot of stuff now? Oh, and sure, isn't your man up to something again? Oh, sure, isn't your one being bold all the time? When the dialogue is like this all the time, it just got a little irksome. And also, I think what she was going for, the topic that she's trying to deal with, is something that we learn about so much in school here that I really do need to be in the mood to want to learn or to want to read about it. And I don't think I really need to read more about it because I'm swamped. I was swamped by it in school. So like, find something else to write about in Irish fiction, you know? And then I read Foster. And this is what I mean. This is what I want. This is what Irish fiction should be. We don't need to talk about the Magdalen laundries and the grip of the Catholic Church all the time. We don't need it. It's been done to death. This was a breath of fresh air. And everything that she tries to do in small things like these, which many people believe she accomplishes, including many Irish people. It's a very popular book here. To tell you what they're actually about, Small Things Like These, if you don't know, is about a coal worker, a turf cutter, bricklayer, whatever, a fella that drives around in a truck delivering fuel to people and stuff, and like bricks and logs and whatever shit that people need down the country. And he begins to question all of the things that are being swept under the rug by people who would rather not question the Catholic Church. And this is a very prevalent thing in Ireland, and it's something that has swung completely in the opposite direction in the last 20 years. But there's still a lot of that around in Ireland, of like, oh, we don't talk about the problem, the struggle. We put on a smile and we make a cup of tea and we fucking get on with it. You know what I mean? That's still a very prevalent sensibility in Ireland. It's like, well, fuck it, let's get on with it. It'd be grand. Let's just have a pint or a cup of tea and have a laugh, and we'll get on with it. And you kind of brush it to the side. That is her theme. That is what she wanted to talk about, and that is kind of what Small Things Like These is about. And that is kind of what Foster is also about. But this one is just about a child who is dropped off at her like aunt and uncle for the summer. There is very little we really learn or are confirmed about the people in the story, but it's a lot of small moments and moments of quiet tenderness that you just know who these people are if you're an empathetic person. And I think she really nails it in Foster. In Small Things Like These she does, but it's probably my problem with the subject matter, and also I think she overdid it with the dialogue and the rhetorical questions, because yes, that is a feature of Irish dialect, especially in the countryside, of asking rhetorical questions in conversation. But like, to the extent she did it, it was really annoying. Maybe I'm just speaking as a dub, but anyway.
I think people that aren't from Dublin might say that.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, he'd say it anyway. He's a dub. Sure, wouldn't a dub be saying it? Foster is just a very beautiful story about kindness, about keeping children's innocence alive, protecting them, shielding them from bad things, because it's really not necessary for kids to go through traumatic things. And it's very, very touching. And the last page here, her writing really, really works, because she does pack punches in what is kind of left under the surface for you to just feel, you know? So I would say, if you're going to try out some contemporary Irish fiction and you want to read Claire Keegan, read Foster. This is the cream of the crop. Small Things Like These is grand if you've never read about the Magdalen laundries, but you're not going to learn a whole lot about the Magdalen laundries either if you read Small Things Like These. So anyway, That's it. If you don't know what the Magdalen Laundries actually are, it's where women were sent for decades in Ireland, up until the 90s, actually, if they had children out of wedlock, if they drank too much in public, if, they were considered problem children, but it was women that did this. Men could do whatever they want. Catholic Church, who'd have thunk it? Anyway, Foster, good. Small things like these, mid.
So my quest for the banger before the end of the year continued, and I decided to maybe pick some books that have been on the shelf for a while, that I've been meaning to read for a while, and I'm pretty confident I'm going to really, really like. And the first of these books that I picked up was The Truth About the Harry Quebert Affair.
Harry Quebert.
Harry Quebert, as I have not so affectionately been calling him.
The Truth About the Stephen Colbert Affair.
I you know what? I would urge you, if you haven't yet, to watch my DNF party video. And the last book I talk about is this one, because I went into quite a bit of detail about what I didn't like about it. I DNF'd this book at about had a halfway point, like 300 and something pages. I do want to mention it here, though, because I did dedicate a good bit of time to it. I did not like it. I thought it was very readable, which is why I could have kept going, but this has not been a good enough reading year for me to put myself through something that I'm getting annoyed at, even if it's still readable.
Also, if it were only 300 pages, like a self-respecting thriller should be.
Yeah, or even 400, but I had another 300 to go. Yeah. No, thank you. Basically, to sum my thoughts up, I think this book is overrated as fuck.
Wow, that was you said that with venom.
I seem to still be resentful. It took up a considerable amount of my time, and my time has been precious lately. So this book is just it's a crime book. It's called a literary crime book. It's only literary because there's writers in it, and I'm just sick of writers writing about writers, and I'm just not interested in it. So I just rolled my eyes at all the pseudo wisdom. There's also a theme of abuse towards a minor. Essentially, the main character, or one of the main characters, is a pedophile. He has an affair with a 15-year-old when he's 34, and I don't think that was well handled at all. And I don't care what the second half of the book does. It can't redeem that to me. So anyway, I'm very annoyed at this book. And if you want to hear more about my thoughts in a funny and slightly drunk way, you can go watch the DNF party video.
Yeah.
So yeah, still no banger.
Well, I read some bangers. So I'm not quite finished the second of these two books here, which is actually the fourth in the series, the final book. But I read Before Mars by Emma Newman, and I'm gonna finish this now in the next day or two. This is Atlas Alone. These are book 3 and 4 in the Planetfall series, which I now firmly believe that is quite possibly one of the most groundbreaking science fiction series in the modern era. That I just think this is timely, creative about the future in ways that don't feel recycled, and there's a lot of stuff here in these books about AI and future government corporations and geo corporations that kind of replace countries, and those ideas aren't new in science fiction, but she handles them with a modern lens, with a modern sensibility of 21st century feelings of burnout and mental illness and mental health, while looking at all of that stuff in a science fiction lens, if that makes sense. So her books are basically sci-fi, but with a heavy focus on mental health and sort of that societal, cultural criticism, and criticism of technology, but not just technology bad. It's here's how technology can save us, but also if we're not smart about it, here's how it can really fuck us up. There's a lot about sort of indentured slavery, and a kind of a falling into it with being priced out of things, and this takes inflation to the extreme and corporate work and contract work to the absolute extreme. Like what is it going to be like in 200 years if we continue on the road we're going down? And these characters in these books all have mental health problems, various mental health problems. Planetfall, which I read a few years ago, is about a woman with severe anxiety disorder, and it's about a group of people that go on a spaceship to a distant planet because they're following the Pathfinder, who believes that she has the answers to existence and life, and they're going to find it on this planet. They're going to find the answer to the big question. What is the big question? We don't know. But the woman that we follow in that book is just going because she loves the Pathfinder. But she also is hiding something. The second book is After Atlas, which Atlas is the ship that they go on in Planetfall. After Atlas is set on Earth around about the same time, maybe like actually 20 or 30 years after that ship takes off. And we follow a young man in indentured servitude, basically, a contractor. He's a detective for the Neuropean government or something like that. It's basically, they call Britain No Rope. I guess that's a bit of a pun. He's basically contracted by this GovCorp to be a detective and investigate the murder of a cult leader. And this cult is an anti-technology cult. And there's a lot of AI stuff. It's very cyberpunk. That character is struggling with repressed trauma and kind of hidden memories and that kind of thing. In Before Mars, we have an artist, painter / geologist who is sent to Mars. She arrives on Mars. She is contracted to paint landscapes of Mars so that her boss can make a lot of money from them. And he wants her to paint using mud from Mars and give it the authentic feel or whatever. But she wants to go there as a geologist, so her scientific brain wants to be engaged as well. And she is suffering from postpartum depression, and she has all these feelings of abandoning her child and also feelings of, well, I don't really like being a mother. And that's a very interesting character to read about. But also the thing about these books is they're written like thrillers, but literary thrillers. Very, very psychologically driven thrillers. And Atlas alone is a direct sequel to After Atlas, so I can't really tell you anything about it because there's a major event that happens in these books that kind of ripples through the last three. And we follow the other character from the second book, basically from her perspective. And she basically is suffering from depression because of the state of the world now and the way things are and powerful people covering things up and this kind of stuff. But she is a gamer, a virtual reality gamer, which they call immersives. And she is investigating things in immersives, very cyberpunky, but she's currently trapped on a spaceship with 30,000 other people. Very cool. I think that Before Mars is possibly one of the best science fiction books I've read. Just so ridiculously compelling. It's a fascinating character to follow. This idea of instant love for your child once you become a mother or a parent, but particularly this is about motherhood. What about these mothers that give birth, experience postpartum depression, and have all of these thoughts about, well, do I really want to be a mother? And all of the anxiety kind of around that, and the feelings of guilt that arise because of it, and self-hatred, and this just being a spiral into a pit of depression. And that's what this book is about, but just throw her on Mars in a metal container with a bunch of people that put pressure on her and she's struggling to get along with for reasons that she doesn't even believe in morally. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book, and it's just really, really well written. And again, it reads like a thriller. You just want to keep going. You want to keep turning the pages because there's shit you want to find out. There's mysterious shit going on. She realizes that like the station AI is hiding data from her. They're taking pictures of the outside so she can scout what she wants to go paint. And it's just duplicating images so that they're hiding something specific in a location. Weird stuff's going on. But she starts to think that maybe she's experiencing paranoia. And there are people on the base who then start to question her and tell her you're being paranoid. And the psychologist on the base is obviously going to tell her that she's crazy, but she's not crazy. And that's just a trope that really gets me every time, when the person you kind of know is not crazy is being told that they're crazy, and then you have this seed of doubt planted in you for the whole book. Are they actually crazy? It's a really, really good book. Atlas Alone is also great so far, and I'll be finished that in the next day or two. I will make a video about Planetfall and sort of pitch that to everybody because I think it's a criminally underrated science fiction series of the last like 10, 15 years. And it is very, very timely, talking about a lot of topics that are on public consciousness at the moment. And she does it very, very well. So I'll go over that maybe in a Planetfall video. But Before Mars, easily one of my favourite books of the year.
Well, my quest continues. So the next book that has been on the shelf for a while and that I was feeling quite confident about was Beartown by Frederick Backman. So I read A Man Called Ova 2 years ago, I think, and really loved it. It was one of my favourite books of the year. And Beartown sounded like I would enjoy it as well. And I am very, very happy to say that I did. I like this book a lot. So it is a bit of a Booktube darling, I think. If you don't know anything about it, this is translated from Swedish, and it's about a small town in the north of Sweden called Beartown, where it's very cold and very dark for half of the year. The days are extremely short, and it's essentially a little town in a forest, and it gets down to minus 20 or 30 degrees Celsius on a daily basis in the winter months. And it's a very small community. It's the kind of place that people leave because there's no job opportunities, there's no industry, there's nothing to do. But they do have a hockey team that used to be relatively successful. Not anymore, the glory days are gone, but the junior team is very good again. So the town has hopes that if the junior team is able to win their next 2 matches and win a championship, that next year they'll have a good senior team again, and that will have a ripple effect and bring money back into the town, keep people there, create jobs, etc., etc. So there's a lot of pressure put on that hockey team, and a lot of people projecting all of their hopes and dreams onto it. And so this book does revolve around hockey, but it doesn't really. I think you can substitute that with any team sport. And like what I could relate to is like I grew up with a lot of people that were playing relatively competitive basketball, and it wasn't to the level that like this is, you know, they build it up in their mind that it defines the entire future of the town. But you know, sports can get very, very intense. People care very, very, very much, and it creates a beautiful community, but it can get quite toxic quite easily, and that is what this book is about. And I don't really want to say more of like where that goes, but it's about the dynamics in this town. So we follow a bunch of teenagers in the hockey team, outside of the hockey team, of different ages. We follow their parents, most of them from the town, not all of them, and what life is like. And it builds this 360 degrees almost image of this community. And it's a quite different style to his other book that I read. So clearly he chooses how he's going to write depending on the subject matter. And this is quite, he poses philosophical questions. The narrator is very present. He gives you glimpses of like, oh, in the future, this will happen, but keeps it vague. And then we go back and he kind of teases you. So if that's not something that you enjoy, I can see that being maybe annoying or jarring. I'm not sure if like the philosophical, not in any like real like philosophy sense, but just like, oh, what is grief and the ponderings. I don't know if that is my favorite thing, but I did enjoy what he did with it enough that it didn't bother me at the very least. I'm not entirely sure where I fall on it. I didn't notice it. I did notice the writing. I noticed that I was reading, if that makes sense, when that came up. But I found the actual story and the characters very, very real, very believable. And I just wanted to know what would happen to them. I cared about what would happen to them. There's a second and a third book. I wasn't sure. I haven't bought them yet. I wasn't sure if I'd want more or if I'd be happy with like this one story. But I found when I got to the end of the book that I cared about the place and the characters, and I wanted to know what would happen to them in the future. So it's a great book. I think Frederick Backman is a writer that really works for me. I think that the themes that he weaves into his books are just themes that I think are interesting. He talks about how people are with each other, basically, and I think A Man Called Ove, or Ova, is a little bit more towards the positive, and this is a little bit more towards the negative, but it's not a depressing book by any means. I think there's a lot of hope and strength in it, but there's a lot of sadness in it as well. So yeah, I think it's a really good book. I liked it a lot. Is it a top 10 book of the year? I'm not sure. It's definitely a candidate to it. I'd have to look at the list and what I've read to be certain. So is it a banger? Sort of. Yes, I think it's a great book. It's not a, oh my God, this is one of the best books I've read, new favorite kind of thing. But it does solidify Frederick Backman as an author that I really, really like and that I just kind of pick up anything by. So that is a win. Certainly probably one of the best books I've read in the second half of the year. Well, definitely one of the best books I've read in the second half of the year. So I'm happy.
Very, very briefly before I talk about then what I'm in the middle of, or we talk about what we're in the middle of and maybe some December plans. I read The Myth of American Idealism by Noam Chomsky and Nathan J. Robinson. And this is continuing my non-fiction era. And this is all about US foreign policy, basically for the last 80 years. So post-World War II, how US foreign policy shaped the world, to be honest. It talks about Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. It talks about Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and uncovering a lot of the narratives that have been spun in the media and I guess in political discourse about the intentions behind certain things. A lot of the stuff we probably know, the US went to Afghanistan to get oil, and they decimated Iraq for oil. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff here about, propping up authoritarian regimes and this sort of warped idea of, kind of fighting for liberating places from certain regimes only to prop up other regimes that just support their interests, and that kind of thing. And then it goes on and talks about Israel-Palestine. It talks about kind of the current state of things in the Middle East, and also its relations with the other big allies that have questionable foreign policy, namely the UK. It's a very interesting book, and it's a very accessible entry into all of Noam Chomsky's thoughts on this topic. Noam Chomsky is obviously mainly a linguist, but he is a very, very famous political theorist and cultural critic, and has been a vocal kind of critic or like asking questions of American foreign policy for decades. He's a very old man. If you want to get an overview of Chomsky's ideas and what he's written about throughout his entire career. This is a kind of a summary book of everything. It's why it kind of takes you through the different regions and facts behind a lot of it as well. There's a lot of sort of fact checking that goes on here that is both eye-opening and recontextualizing. It's an excellent book.
Well, I'm just in the middle of one thing, so I can get that out of the way, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. And ladies and gentlemen, this might be the banger I was looking for.
Nice.
In a very, very, very dark way. But I think that fits the mood of the year from just me like looking at my Goodreads. So I'm a bit over halfway through. I won't say too much. That will be in the December wrap up. But this book it's essentially once again about child abuse. And Vanessa is the main character, and we have two timelines: the year 2000 when she's 15, and the year 2017 when she's 32. And in the year 2017, somebody that she went to school with, or that went to her same school a few years after her, accuses their former teacher of abusing her, being abusive. She reaches out to Vanessa and basically says, like, I know this happened to you too. You know, do you want to, like, join me, basically? And Vanessa's like, no, this did not happen to me. It was all completely consensual. What are you talking about? And then we go back to the year 2000 and we learn what happened between her and the teacher when she was 15 and he was in his 40s. And I think the most impressive thing here so far is first, like, examining what that trauma does to her as an adult, and being in that state of trauma. Like, she has not really taken any steps, been able to do any work to, like, get help or even acknowledge that trauma exists, really. And that going between those two timelines and how it weaves together is really, really expertly done. But also, she walks a very, I think, tricky line to walk between not shying away from the horrible things that are happening here, but also never making it feel exploitative in itself as the writing, or making it feel gratuitous, or making it feel pornographic. Like, it's always just extremely uncomfortable, and just, it's very, very good. It's a book that I'm finding extremely compelling to read. It's hard to put down, but at the same time, hard to read. And just sometimes you just have to, like, put it down for a second. So yeah, it's a great, great book so far, and I will be reporting back when I finish it.
Since Yolanda has not continued or even started with her Nobel Prize project, I figured I would take up the slack for the channel and do that myself, even though I wasn't even in that video.
I feel so shaded right now.
I'm currently reading Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead.
What a great title.
Yeah, best title of the year, to be honest. This is by Olga Tokarczuk, who is a Polish Nobel laureate. She won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2019, 20, don't remember, who cares. This is a really good book so far, and I didn't know anything about it at all, apart from the really cool title. But this is about a strange, reclusive old lady living in a remote Polish village up in the snow, who is very obsessed with astrology and washing her feet before bed in case she dies and has to be taken out of bed. It's kind of funny, it's odd, it's quirky, it's just fucking strange, it's off kilter. She has nicknames for all of the people in her town because she doesn't really like anybody. She likes dogs and cats.
That's fair. Honestly.
Yeah. But she finds her neighbour dead one morning.
Did he wash his feet?
He's called Bigfoot, and he's a very hairy person. And she doesn't like this guy because he was quite neglectful of his dog. And it's kind of turning into a bit of a crime noir, but a very, offbeat kind of look. It's very good so far. And the writing is great. Who'd have thunk it? Nobel Prize winner. Anyway, that's that. And I need some comfort in my life as well, so I'm reading Tana French, The Trespasser.
Ah, yes. The author known for really, really dark, atmospheric, slow crime.
Comfort in the sense that I know I'm going to like this, and this close to home. This book is set in our area. This is the 6th book in the Dublin Murder Squad. You can read them in any order you want, really. Apart from the first 2, you need to read them in order. So the 2 cops in question here get sent out to a murder, and they're going to have to investigate it. But it's just great. The dialogue is great. The writing is great. This is so Dublin. This is so inner city Dublin. It's artful without being pretentious. It's Tana French, and I'm enjoying it.
Really quickly though, we are going into the last month of the year. We've already said we're going to start our end of year content soon. I think we could do a bit of planning for that. But in terms of reads, do we have plans? What's the vibe? What's the mood?
I have one plan for around Christmas. We'll see now how long it takes me to finish those couple of books. But I do intend to, because it's comforting and I've planned this, to finish Memory, Sorrow and Thorn. I will be reading To Green Angel Tower by Tad Williams. And that'll be knocking another huge series off the list then. This is a massive book, and I managed to find a hardcover in our local secondhand bookshop when Jimmy was here, actually. When Jimmy and Kelsey were here.
Yeah.
We took him to the little fantasy section in the secondhand bookstore. And did you find this or did Jimmy find this?
I don't remember.
Anyway, so I was like, well, I gotta have it.
I think I found it and Jimmy encouraged you to buy it.
Yeah, well, it didn't take much encouragement, but yeah.
No, it didn't.
My idea of cozy Christmas reads is epic fantasy in the vein of Tad. This sort of traditional epic fantasy is what I consider to be cozy fantasy. So this year, I think I want that to be To Green Angel Tower, because it's the end of this trilogy that I started 2 years ago. So yeah, that's one I'll probably do.
I have no plans. I would like to read something cozy for like Christmas and the second half of December especially, but I'm not going to make any kind of assumptions as to what that might be. Titles, authors, genres. We're going to keep it open because that's just a recipe for disaster for me right now. So
yeah.
No plans. I'm going to finish my Dark Vanessa, which is not cozy at all.
Let's wrap this up because this is probably our longest wrap up of the year.
What is your book of the month?
Before Mars by Emma Newman.
Excellent. Well, mine is Beartown. That's easy, actually. Cool. Okay, now we can wrap it up. Let us know if you've read any of these books and if you like them or not, or if you're interested in reading any of these books. As always, we will chat to you in the comments. Give the video a like.
If you stuck around to the end of this video, please like the video and comment on it. And if you have found this channel for the very first time and you watched this entire video, fair play to you. Well done.
Well done.
Yeah.
I think you deserve to hit subscribe.
Very good. All right, we're going to go now. Bye.